All right. If you could all take your seats. Great. All right. Honorable Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Phoebe Kiboi. It's an absolute pleasure for me to welcome you to our session today on the very last day of MWC Africa. As I'm sure you've all heard from the various keynotes and all the sessions that you've had throughout the entire 3 days, a common thread is developing on the importance of closing the usage gap. And even more importantly, how critical it now is for us to move towards action. So today we will focus on exactly that. How do we move from challenge to impact? How do we ensure that the underserved, particularly women, are connected and get to enjoy all the benefits that all of you in this room enjoy? We will have panel discussions where you'll hear from a diverse set of opinions on the work that they're doing to address the challenge. And you'll also get a chance to ask them questions and see more tangible things that you can all apply in the work you're doing to make sure that we're moving towards impact. I would like to start by acknowledging FCDO and CEDA, without whom the work that we do as a Connected Women, Connected Society teams would not be possible. So to start, please join me in welcoming Honorable Paula Ingabire, Minister of ICT and Innovation for the government in Rwanda, to come and give her keynote speech. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. We need some energy. We can't be discussing a very important topic, but also at the same time, it's the last day, so let's gather up all the energy that we have in us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to take part in this exciting session. And I say it's exciting, but also timely because of its focus on the need to address the exacerbated inequalities hindering scalable socioeconomic impact for women and underserved groups. As mentioned by the MC for today's session, over the last 2 days, we've had various speakers who've painted a picture, and I might say a grim picture of how, as partners, as operators, we've managed to considerably reduce the coverage gap for mobile broadband networks on one hand, but on the other hand, we still have a large gap to cover when it comes to adoption and usage of mobile internet services. According to the Mobile Economic Report of 2022 by GSMA, the adoption gap is at 41%, where the coverage stands at 65%. But when you look at the statistics for our different countries, a country like Rwanda, where we have over 95% coverage gap, and yet adoption is still at 30%, it just means that we still have a lot of work to do. This low adoption can be attributed to several reasons, including the lack of awareness, affordability, whether it's affordability for devices and the data services, digital skills, the relevance of content, perceptions, and the safety concerns in some context. For some segments of the population, the gaps are even more apparent, especially for women, the elderly, people in rural areas, people that live with disabilities. As we discuss today how to reach those groups and shift conversations, as the title says, as we shift the conversations from just stating the challenges and the statistics around the challenge, but rather to creating impact, I want to call upon each one of us that is here today to recommit to our noble responsibility to ensure the effective implementation of the principle we all quote very well, which is leaving no one behind. Even if it requires going back to the drawing board and portraying the digital inclusion status in all its breadth and complexity, until all the real issues are tackled, we will not be able to make the shift from challenges to impact. The global catastrophes, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, have unveiled the true size of the problem, but also set the precedents on the urgent actions that are needed to bridge the digital access and adoption gaps for women and underserved groups. The opportunity to leverage this tide should not be missed, and more than ever, the value of mobile for development has to be realized for everyone. Policies and business models must be adapted to keep the end user at the center. And when we talk about the end user, it's just not one particular segment of the population, but we must be deliberate about those underserved groups and deliberate to close on the gender digital divide. This Tuesday, we launched Rwanda's National Revised Broadband Policy, which aims to accelerate Rwanda into a competitive and innovative global digital economy through accessible and quality broadband. Also, in the various programs that we've been implementing here in Rwanda, parity is a principle by default. Through our Connect Rwanda campaign that seeks to ensure that we create awareness and empower our citizens with smartphones as a basic tool to access the investments that have been made in the digital economy, we've launched a campaign where 50% of the beneficiaries are female-headed vulnerable households. Similarly, as we think about closing the gender gap when it comes to the technology field that is more so male-dominated, we've created a specialized school called the Rwanda Coding Academy that specializes in training software developers targeting young children from ages 13 to 15. And by design and as a principle, we ensure that 50% of the students admitted in that school are female. If we have to skill them early, we have to start early, not when they're getting out of university. The various exchanges during this Mobile World Congress Africa so far have reiterated the need for building digital capacities and skills, collaboration and efficient use of data, as well as creating opportunities and involving startups. The MWC Africa's Mobile for Development program aims at driving innovations in digital technologies to reduce inequalities in the world. Through it, let's continue to look at ways together to bridge access and adoption gaps through enabling relevant services to all and harness the digital transformation impact in all our citizens' lives. I won't take much because I know we have a good panel lined up for us this morning. We'll hear more from them, we'll exchange more, and I look forward to driving this noble cause with everyone going forward. I thank you and wish you fruitful deliberations.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Some really good points that you've raised on leveraging the tide and making sure no one is left behind. I'm particularly fond of the point on we have to skill early to make sure that we're reaping these benefits a lot later. So thank you so much for that. Next, we will hear from Anna Wilson, Development Director at the High British Commission in Rwanda. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We welcome you to give your remarks.
Good morning. Thank you, Honourable Minister. It's a real pleasure to follow you today, and I'd like to start by commending the Government of Rwanda for their commitment to digital inclusion, to addressing the digital divide, and all of the really specific and tangible actions you've just outlined for us. Thank you so much. I'm also really looking forward to hearing from all of our excellent speakers on the panel today about strategies and approaches to addressing mobile connectivity gaps. This topic is really critical. And we all know it's critical. It's really critical today because mobile connectivity is so important for individuals, for economies, for societies. Important because it enables access to important information, access to services, and access to opportunities to connect, to learn, to grow, to thrive. And we know that mobile internet connectivity is the main route online for many people in low and middle income countries. And the COVID-19 pandemic has underlined the importance of internet connectivity. We've seen digital transformation really accelerate in recent years. We've seen real progress on online education and health services, e-commerce, remote working, all of this has highlighted the importance of the internet. I think we're all convinced of the importance of this topic. We're also well aware of the access and the adoption gap that the Minister's just outlined so well, that too many are still living without connection to mobile technology, and that there's a gender gap. Globally, women are 16% less likely to be connected, and that's much higher in Africa. Also, disabled people are significantly less likely to be connected to mobile internet than non-disabled people. And like other obstacles to development, poverty, appropriate infrastructure, social norms, these statistics limit individuals' life chances, and they also have negative impacts for society and economy as a whole. Whereas, in contrast, if we succeed in overcoming these barriers and ensuring digital inclusion for otherwise marginalised groups, this can help them to overcome other barriers. As the Honourable Minister has previously said, digital inclusion sets people up for so many other kinds of inclusion. So inclusion is essential for sustainable development. Gender equity is essential for sustainable development, and mobile internet's a key enabler of that. So it's really easy to see why the UK is so committed to digital inclusion, why we're happy to recommit to those goals the Minister set out, and easy to see the rationale for our work with GSMA to address the digital divide. Through partnerships with mobile industry, with mobile operators, this support to GSMA, has collectively ensured that over 55 million additional women have access to mobile internet and mobile money services. It's also helped to reach over 50 million people with a mobile internet training toolkit, ensuring that they have the skills they need to access the right services once online. And since 2020, 8 mobile operators are driving the digital inclusion of persons with disabilities, and 9 startups have been supported to address digital inclusion in Africa and in Asia. Here in Rwanda, we are embedding digital inclusion in all of our development work, and under the lead of the government, following the government's lead, we're really making sure that once people get mobile technology, once they get connected, they then have access to appropriate services and opportunities to enable them to thrive. So, for example, through working with the financial sector, including CLECAM, we've supported smallholder farmers to have access to appropriate microloans through mobile banking. And I was delighted that on my first trip out of Kigali early last year, I was able to meet with farmers, with smallholder farmers, and hear about the real difference that that's making to the money in their pocket and to the time in their day. We've also worked with Access to Finance Rwanda, which has helped to digitalise cash transfers for some of the poorest, again, reliant on mobile technology. And through our work in schools, we're helping to ensure that teachers have access to appropriate technology and materials so that they're equipped to do their jobs, both in the classroom and at home. I'm really proud that the UK is part of this effort, working in partnership with government, with the private sector, and with so many more. But as we've heard the figures, there's so much more to do. There's millions left to reach. We must scale up efforts. As the Minister said, we must unpack and tackle the issues and the challenges. So I'm delighted to hand over first to Claire Sibthorpe for her presentation, and then to hearing from each of our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for your words and for also really outlining why it's so important that we're here. You know, we're not doing digital for digital's sake. This really does transform businesses, lives, economies. We need to focus on this. So I'm going to try and get the technology to work. So I thought we heard some of the numbers, but I thought I'd just put them on the screen to show, you know, what does the, if we could get the slide showing what the numbers look like, so that we really understand as we tackle the challenge ahead. Last week we published the updated data. You've been hearing about it. I again want to thank FCDO and CEDA for allowing us to do this. Without this data, we just don't know where to invest our efforts and what's happening. So if you look at Sub-Saharan Africa, you can see that that there has been significant progress. Let's not forget that, but that there are only 22% of people who are using mobile internet. And but that means that there's a huge population that aren't. But we recognize that Sub-Saharan Africa is a young population. So we also looked at what happens if you just look at those who are 18 and above, and the numbers do increase to 40%. So it is, but there's still a ways to go. So there was more to do, and so I think now if we go into I'm going to go to show where, what do we when we look at who's not connected, what do we mean? So there's about 17% of people who live in this continent who are just not covered by mobile broadband. But there's a whopping 61% of the population who live within a mobile network coverage but are not able to use it. And again, if you look at the adult population, that does decrease to 44%, but it's still significant. And I think that this highlights, as we've been hearing throughout this conference, that the usage gap is really where we need to have a big focus of efforts. We need to look at what are those barriers, and the Honourable Minister articulated them very well about what are some of the barriers that we need to address to tackle this usage gap. And I'm going to look at now, we need to go beyond. We need to, as the Honourable Minister said, we need to be deliberate and focused. So, who is not connected? And again, these are very high level and they could be disaggregated further, but we can see that the unconnected are predominantly rural, female, persons with disabilities, poor, and less educated. So we see that women are 37% less likely to use mobile internet. People in rural areas are 54% less likely to use mobile internet. And those who are the richest, so the poorest are 40% or 54% less likely to use mobile internet than the richest. And when we do our research, we ask people, can you tell us what are the barriers and can you rank them for us? And what we hear, the reported, among mobile owners who are aware of mobile internet, we ask them, they say that the top barriers that they face are literacy and digital skills and affordability, particularly handset affordability. Let's not forget that there's many other barriers, as has been acknowledged, making sure there's relevant content and services, making sure people feel safe and secure online. And what we need to do is we need to holistically address these barriers. And we know from our work, because we've been really trying to work with so many partners across the continent on this issue, that if you have informed, targeted action, it is possible to make a difference and to reach scale. Anna shared some of the impact numbers that we've had. I mean, it is possible. So I think we have a ways to go, but we also know where we need to focus, and we know it is possible. So I'm delighted to welcome Phoebe and a group of panelists on stage who can share exactly what they're doing to reach scale and help inspire us and see what we can learn from them about how we can really scale up our efforts, because I think the numbers show that scale is what we need to do now. Thank you very much.
Okay, I hope you're not tired of me yet. I'll be done soon. So I'm really glad to have the two people that you see on stage with me. They've done quite a lot of work in this space, and hopefully you'll get to hear their thoughts on the same. So join me in first welcoming Noor Al-Khatib, who is a senior manager at MTN Group. And I'd say her passion is leading MTN to be the forefront of digital literacy and unleashing the entrepreneurial potential of mobile. Welcome, Noor.
It's not working. Okay, it's working now. Thank you very much. And we in MTN, we say when hello is not enough, we say yellow. So yellow everyone, and yellow Rwanda at first place. And thanks a lot for giving us an example that there is always hope and there is nothing is impossible. Honestly, nothing is impossible. Just living and seeing what Rwanda is doing. Microphone. Okay, it's back again. So in MTN, we are leading digital solutions for Africa's progress. And is it working? Yeah. And we're just now talking about digital solutions, and the mic, it didn't work. But anyway, so as I said, that we are leading digital solutions for Africa's progress, and we are working on that based on our core belief that everyone deserves the benefit of a modern connected life. And in the last 4 years, and up till now, we are still working on what we call it Chase framework. We have created a Chase framework in order to deliver up to our promise. What does it mean? We looked at the barriers, and we thought that first, coverage. Like the coverage is a main barrier, so that's why we need to look at the coverage and to provide the rural sites and the connectivity to the rural areas in our continent. In addition to that, like, of course, the 3G and the 4G kind of coverage in our continent. So the first part, it was the coverage, and just only by the end of 2021, we have managed in order to give 4G coverage to 22 million subscribers in our continent. And in addition to that, of course, we do have the rural sites, 1,277 rural sites in the rural areas. We move to the second barrier, which is the handset and the devices, and everyone talking about the devices. And we said, okay, well, we need to work on a very clear program about device financing. Just only in the first half of this year, we have put around 8.6 million devices in the hands of our customers, and still the gap is big. So that's why we are kind of working with many startups in the continent, and we have piloted with a startup called Makoba by providing 220,000 devices this year by device financing model. We have tried it in Uganda, and next is coming in Rwanda, Madam Minister. So we hear you, we listen to you, and it's going to be across all our continent. In addition to that, we said that affordability is a big thing in the continent. So that's why we need to work on affordability and how we are going to put our model process for the data. So we have noticed that since we are providing this, the kind of the data usage has increased around 25%. We moved then after that to service bundling, and we said, okay, what people they need, what are the inspiration and motivation? So we need to provide kind of services that address their needs, their requirements, the insight that we are getting from the research. And the last one in the Chase framework is the education, because of course, if they don't know how to deal with the internet, if they don't know how to get connected, how they are going to be on the internet. So we have worked closely with Mobile for Development. We have worked closely with GSMA in the content, relevant content that is related to our continent. And since we started this Chase framework up till now, we have trained around 30 million customers in our continent. Yes, the conversion rate is just only 15% till now, but we are hoping that it's going to be more. We are moving, we take this seriously, and we do believe that connectivity is power. So that's why we need to work on this, and we're carrying on the Chase framework in MTN. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And as I'm sure you've seen, she's very passionate about this as well. So that's great. You know, we need people with more passion. All right, thank you so much, Noor. So I'll also want to introduce Ezana Razwat. Thank you so much for joining us. For most of you, I'm sure you've seen him in one panel or the other throughout MWC. He is the founder and CEO of Africa 118, which is one also of GSMA's Innovation Fund startups. Done amazing work on leading marketing services and supporting small and medium enterprises in Africa. So thank you so much, Ezana, for coming. Maybe I'll just go directly and ask you a question, you know, so that you can also tell us about the work that you're doing. So as we have seen from the stats that was shown, 61% of Sub-Saharan Africa is still within that usage gap, right? So what is it that you have done to address those barriers? What lessons have you learned within the context that you work in that have helped you in tackling that particular gap?
So yellow. So we're addressing the, you talked about 61% in terms of usage gap. So the gap that we focus on is the 90% of usage gap around MSMEs on the continent. So what you'll find is a lot of medium and small, micro and small enterprises actually have no connectivity, so they don't really have the benefit of being online. From the work that we did with GSMA in terms of design thinking, there's basically 3 reasons why this is the case. They're quite consistent. One is awareness. So if I'm a leather shop, a fashion designer, I'm in the honey or coffee business. Why do I need to be online? So helping to educate that it does make a difference. You'll get new clients if you do so is number one. Number two is expertise. So if I understand that I need to be online, how do I go about doing that? So helping to come up with practical solutions to help them take the first step in terms of digitization. And the third one, which is consistent with what you said, as well as what you mentioned, Noor, is affordability. So specifically, if I'm getting online, how much does it cost me? And so the sweet spot that we found is somewhere between $10 and $20 a month. Is probably for most MSMEs what they're willing to spend. So being able to put together a solution that one helps me understand why I should be online, how do I go about doing it, and is very affordable, is something that we've done some work on. We call it a digital starter pack, but that's something that helps to ensure that the power of being online, the internet helps to connect the businesses, help sure that they can grow and then create more jobs. I'll just say there was a focus around helping to ensure that we manage gender as well, but I'm sure we'll get to that separately.
Great, thank you so much, Zana. Maybe I'll go back to you, Noor. You've outlined the Chase strategy for MTN Group, and we'd like to really focus on the E part of that as well. You have mentioned that you've reached 30 million people, which is incredible scale across the continent, and I know you want to reach even more. So how have you delivered this at that scale? How have you managed to move from a small pilot to huge scale, and how do you continue to ensure that that training is actually helping people become more active online or go to the internet for the first time?
Look, Phoebe, firstly, I think that we need to understand that it's not just only about us, it's about our people in the continent, and they're really hungry in order to know, and they're really hungry to get connected. So we have counted, in fact, on the researches that we run across all our markets, just to understand the customer needs, the customer insights, what motivates them, what inspires them. And then based on that, we have created relevant content, because you can't go, like, let's say, to one of the rural villages and just to start to talk to them about these cloud services and all of that. You need to start with the basics. You need to get the basics right and to provide like a relevant content to them in order to get them connected. So we have started this pilot in many of our markets, and then after that, it's rolling out across all our markets, and we are trying to reach out to more. So again, that getting the research and getting the results, getting the insights, hearing to the people. Like, let's say, for example's sake, let me say something, that the first that we started to roll out this content, it was just only in English. And we realized that, okay, the people in Rwanda, they want this content in their local language. So we need to talk to them in their local language. So we have started the localization across all our markets, like just only in Benin. It was big learning for me, because the first time, in my mind, that only French, and I need to provide the content in French. And we realized that there is 11 local language in Benin. So if you want to reach out to our people, we need to speak to them in our language. And it's exactly the same in South Africa, in Rwanda, in Nigeria, in Uganda. So you need to speak to them in their language. You need to bring like a relevant, and you need to assess. It's not just this is one. Secondly, it's customization. And we need to look at our people as not like one size fits all. You need to look at the categories. You need to look at what they are looking for. Like, for example's sake, in Ghana, when we rolled our last research, and people there in Ghana, they were like looking into entertainment content, how to get to this entertainment and gamification kind of world. They are keen, especially the young people there. So I said, okay, well, we collaborated with the GSMA. We have created around 9 pieces of content that address that one. So I guess that you need to understand more your customers. You need to understand that they do have different needs and different motivation and inspiration. You need to carry on evolving the content. It's not like, okay, this is it and that's all. We need to keep evolving. And at some point of time, we moved from even a content that it depends more on the illustration and subtitles into let our people talk about it. Like, let's say, for example's sake, the last content that we have created for Ghana, we brought in customers from Ghana. They produced the content. And they spoken about their experience, about the first time they used the WhatsApp, about the first time they used Google and they managed in order to find something. Believe me, we do have example I can't forget for the rest of my life. In one of the rural areas in South Africa, where I went to kind of a place where they take care of orphanage. And we were just talking about like your names and what is your name, and many names it came around. And I can remember like Kenelwe, a little girl called Kenelwe. I said, Kenelwe, do you know what does your name means? He said, no, I don't know. I said, okay, let's play together. We get into Google, we wrote the name. And then Kenelwe, she was super happy just to know that her name means something. So it's just a small thing, just to understand our people and just to kind of to keep evolving and partner with them on what they need. Yeah.
I have to say, your passion is, oh my goodness. I want to join immediately. What can I do? And the one thing I have noted from everything you've said is the deliberate action, because it's not as easy. You know, you have to, constantly look at what works and really target that. But we'll come back to that. It's just very exciting. Okay, and then Ezana, a lot of the work you do is on SMEs, but obviously through that you have noted that a good number of your customers are women. And it can be challenging in both, social, but also commercially to be able to do this in a sustainable way. So how have you gone about this? What is it that we can learn from the work you're doing? Because you're doing it very well in getting more women online. Yeah.
Actually, it's very consistent with what you said, Noor. So 3 things that we've learned have been effective. The first one is setting targets in terms of gender. So I believe the Honorable Minister mentioned the same thing. In our programs, we make sure that there's at least 50% participation amongst women-led SMEs. In Ethiopia, with the program that we did together with GSMA, actually 70% of the 4,000 women-led SMEs that we supported, 4,000 SMEs, 70% were women-led. So we're very proud of that. So how do we go about doing that? Essentially, what we found is partnering with strong organizations that support women entrepreneurs is sort of what works. Typically, there's strong relationships in place. The format of how they meet is something that we just go along with, ensuring when they meet, how they meet. So what we found is just partnerships has been very effective for us to ensure that our programs are delivered within the context of what these organizations provide to their members. The Women Entrepreneurship Development Program, the Association of Women's Exporters. So we work very closely with them to make sure that our programs actually fit with the format that they've developed. The last thing is on our side, a few adjustments in terms of ensuring that our trainers are women as well. So what we found is that the best sessions we had are sessions where our trainers are women, most of the members are women as well, and all of a sudden there's a dynamic that happens, which is much more impactful, effective than other training sessions we've provided. And usually what you'll find is exactly what you said. At some stage during the session, one of the women entrepreneurs will share her story, and that resonates with the other members and actually creates impact. So there's some things we've learned, and now we just try to replicate that and scale that across our other programs as well.
That's great. I think that really resonates with a lot of the things that we have seen, that you don't necessarily have to create a product specifically for women. But when you have a product that is reaching them, try and make sure that you're communicating and you're making sure that they are included in how you market it, in how you design the product, so that you get more of them online. So it's really great to hear the work that you're doing. So a last question to all of you. We have heard of all the challenges that remain. I'd like to understand what inspires you to keep focusing on addressing this challenge. It's an incredibly difficult one. Like you said, there's so much that you have to do, unlike what you would do on the mainstream. So what inspires you every day to wake up and continue addressing this challenge?
Maybe I think that this is the easiest question. Already inspired and motivated. You know what inspires me? It inspires me this continent and the people in this continent, in our continent. The energy is there. The energy is there. It's full of doers, dreamers, thinkers, creative people. Already the energy is there. What we need to provide is the opportunities that lead to progress of Africa and our continent. So all what we need, like, again, as I said, the dreamers, the doers, the thinkers, they are already there, so it's the energy. It's the energy of our continent. What we are providing is the opportunities. The opportunities like tools, solutions, platforms, content, all of that. When the energy meets the opportunity, it will lead to the progress of our continent. This is the way that I kind of think about it, and this is what inspires me. In addition to that, like people, they say, okay, I can't. We need to kind of move them from can't to can. And how to move them there? We need to partner with them. We need to understand their needs. So doers, they are everywhere, everywhere. And just only one thing, like in the last 2 days, just engaging with the startups here, and you meet like in the boot camps of the startups, I met a Nigerian guy that he has a startup called Crop for Cash. And he is 21 years old, and he introduced himself like, this is Michael, and I'm the CEO of the company. He said, whoa, Michael, okay. So he knows what he wants. He knows what he wants. He knows the vision already is there, already started his business in Nigeria. He is even planning to expand in the continent. So they are already there. We need to find them, and we need to kind of make it happen. And just last word from me, that doing is never done. It's never done. Doing is never done. So I guess that we need to ask all ourselves, like, what are we doing today? And today, and using the power of now, what we are doing today for our continent, for our people, for the progress of Africa. Thank you.
Oh, amazing. I think we could listen to you all day. And then, Zana, the same question, as in, you started this project, you started this company, and it's really tackling something that is very, very difficult to do that. What inspires you to keep going?
I echo that. I think the inspiration is easy, but I think the inspiration that I derive, or we derive, is usually from one. You know, if you, we have one of our clients, Maron Fashion, she's in Addis, a leather designer, she does beautiful things. We helped to put her presence online. She's grown, she's been invited to shows in the US to showcase her products. She's come back, she's grown, she's hired more people, it's scaled, it's wonderful to see. So I think the inspiration just comes from one. If you see the success of that, you want to be able to do more of that. So I think every day when you see a little bit of that happening, I think that it makes us continue to push and drive for success.
Great, thank you. I think the two sound bites I'm going to take from this is inspiration comes from one, and doing is never done. And I think that's something that we'll all take away. So we do have a few minutes for a few questions. If anyone in the audience has a few questions, oh, okay. And the Honorable Minister is also happy to take a few questions as well. So you can have some directed to her. Yes. And you can introduce yourself.
Absolutely, thank you. My name is Carol Ndosi. I'm from Tanzania. I run an NGO that also supports women and digital inclusion. So my question, I think, should go to the minister, because I'm so impressed with what Rwanda is doing. Since it's an African country as well, one of the challenges that we're going through in Tanzania is sociocultural norms when it comes to mobile ownership for women, and how household dynamics also affect that. So I'd like to learn from Rwanda if there are any interventions that bring along men, you know, to also support digital inclusion. Thank you.
I hope this is better. Thanks, Carol. I think that's a great question, and earlier in my remarks I did mention the need to be very deliberate. Again, it's also understanding that if we are going to put in place pro-women policies, it's not something that we can do without the men. And so even when we started out our effort to sensitize and mobilize the population around smartphone ownership, but also making sure that we are very representative also of some of the female-headed households, it was important that we are also speaking to these staggering statistics, so they also understand that if we're going to empower a family, we don't empower just one person. But also the understanding that even when you empower a woman, you're not just giving her a smartphone so that you tick the box that, you have more women with smartphones, but it's also understanding what are they going to use it for that is going to empower the entire family. And so I think what is important for us is that sensitization, the narratives around it, so it's not just saying we want more women with smartphones, but what are they going to use it for? We're putting, and Connect Rwanda was around making sure each household at least has a smartphone. Because with all, as a government, we've digitized all of our services. You can all access all government services online. People are looking for information, opportunities online. And so it was important that we start at a household level to say how do you have at least one person within the household with a smart device, but understanding that whether it ends up being owned by the husband or the wife or the kids in the family, that is not a device for just one person, but for the entire household. And that's how we're able to mobilize more people. And so the other thing that we did is we had corporates and organizations and individuals, making contributions for these funds, and they were very deliberate about who they want these smartphones to go to. And so you had men and organizations that were very deliberate about wanting these funds to be in the hands of either people with disabilities, of women-owned businesses, or women-led households. And so that in itself spoke volumes, because it wasn't the government saying you must give women, but they were also being very deliberate about making sure they're inclusive in their giving and closing on the gap.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Minister. We have only one more question but is it for the panel? We only have time for one. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Aslan Buran. I'm leading the digital inclusion team of GIZ here in Rwanda. And I first want to acknowledge that this is the first keynote address that we had today, over the 3-day conference in general, that acknowledged the existence of people with disabilities. And it's the first one that actually has a sign language interpreter on us. So thank you for that. My question goes to the panelists. You mentioned a lot of initiatives that your organizations are already doing at scale, but none of you mentioned, again, to address people with disabilities. Is that something that's in the planning or in the making, and what do you do?
Thank you so much. It's a very important question. Already we started the engagement and the conversation with the GSMA, with a team at Mobile for Development, in order to take this specifically when it comes to the content, and also when it comes to how we are going to communicate with the people with disabilities to our continent. We are going to pilot. Already the conversation started 2 months ago, but it's in the roadmap, and we acknowledge how important is that from an inclusion point of view. Everyone is included and no one is left behind. So this is something we started, and we do have absolutely a plan in order to make it happen and to pilot in some of our markets. Even we are considering, it's not just only about the content, from a digital skills point of view, even like, that most of the call centers, even for the mobile operators, they are not addressing, or they are not being up to the, to service this type of people and this group of people. So that's why also we met here in the startup boot camps. Some startups, they are they do have the platform, they do have the service. So we connected them with our strategy and transformation team in order to take this into a very serious steps. So we are committed at MTN to do that, and I believe that this is our responsibility, and we should actually even be accountable in order to make everyone is included. Thank you.
Great, and thank you all for your questions. We have now come to the end of this particular panel. I just want to thank our speakers once more for taking the time to join us in discussing this very interesting topic. And they're here if you have any questions to ask them after the session. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so now I step back into MC. I'd like to invite Kim Villion to come on stage and conduct her panel. Thank you so much.
All right, so the challenge is there to keep the energy up, guys. No pressure, it's all on you now. So my name is Kim Fullion. I'm the Market Engagement Director with the Digital Inclusion Program. And I am delighted to introduce you to Sebastian Cordeville, CEO of KaiOS Technologies, and Davide Tacchino, who is the Managing Executive for Terminals and Logistics at Vodacom South Africa. So thank you both very much for being here, and we're going to dive straight into it. Claire touched on affordability, one of the main barriers to mobile internet usage. She mentioned affordability of devices in particular. Noor from MTN touched on the topic. It's part of their Chase framework. You're both familiar with our recent report on handset affordability, which highlights what is currently being done to reduce the cost of handsets, to improve access to financing, and to build the enabling policy and regulatory environments, all of which are key. And then there's the Broadband Commission's report, which identified smartphone financing schemes and reducing tax and improving distribution models as the 3 high priority interventions that are proven to increase smartphone ownership. So the question is, what do we need to prioritize to have the biggest impact in this space? Sebastian, I'll start with you, and then I'll allow Davide to respond. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you for the question. And well, I believe the challenge is huge. We've seen all the numbers during the conference before. There's a huge work to bring affordability into the device, to connect people to internet. All these actions, what you've talked about, the financing, the cost of device, everything is important. But I want to highlight one point, which is the cost of ownership. Somebody who moved to internet, who will connect to internet for the first time, is going to have a cost of ownership, which can be the upfront payment, the monthly installment, if you use device financing, and the cost of data. And what I believe we should do is we should make sure that this cost of ownership, total cost of ownership, is as close as possible to the 2G cost of ownership. So today, 2G, you spend roughly $10 upfront and $2 per month, and you get your connection, your device, and your subscriptions. We should be as close as possible to that with the new solution and with internet on top. So to me, the starting point will always be the cost of the device, the landed cost of the device. So it includes the cost of the hardware, the cost of the duty, import duties, and the cost of financing if we do that as well. So at KaiOS, just to explain quickly what we do, we work on smart feature phones, which are internet-capable devices, but in a feature phone form factor, which bring the cost of the device much lower than a full smartphone experience, but still give you the experience of internet, apps, 4G, and so on. So.
Great, thank you. So the challenge is there, bringing down the total cost of ownership to the same as the 2G devices. All right, Davide, would you like to respond?
Yes, first of all, Kim, thank you very much for the question and the opportunity. I really believe digital inclusion is a massive opportunity for Africa population and Africa development. Vodacom and Vodafone Group were among the most active contributors to the United Nations Broadband Commission report on digital inclusion and device affordability. So I fully agree by definition with the conclusions of the report. In terms of priorities, I believe that the highest ones are device financing, and we are doing a lot on device financing across our markets in terms of developments and solution already in place. And industry government intervention on import duties and taxes. Reduction of import duties and taxes can really immediately decrease the street prices of the devices, generate elasticity, generate more sales, and as a consequence, generate more migration towards 4G connectivity and technology. In terms of device financing, it's a real big opportunity. In South Africa and Kenya, we have more than 1.5 million customers migrated to 4G thanks to device financing schemes and initiatives. So they're paying devices by installment without the traditional credit vetting techniques in place. It's a big opportunity, and we combine device financing with other tools and initiatives. As an example, device subsidy to, again, reduce the cost to connect and move customers towards 4G. As an example, according to recent statistics, in South Africa, 78%, or even better, more than 78% of the population access internet through via mobile connectivity, which is a very, very big number. And even more important, 50% are women. So the big effort that we have done in South Africa, and we are very proud of it, and is delivering results. We aim at achieving the same result across all our markets. Outside the priorities, Vodacom is also exploring the opportunity of Second Life devices. We have launched a pre-owned sales initiative in South Africa. The brand is Good as New. We are selling roughly 6,000 devices per month, and this number is growing. And I really believe there is the room, there is the opportunity to move good quality 4G pre-owned devices from developed countries to developing countries. Doing something very good in terms of digital inclusion, and at the same time taking care of the planet. Digital society, inclusion for all, and planet are the key pillars of Vodacom purpose and strategy.
Thank you, Davide. So you mentioned device financing schemes and then also the refurbishment of devices. So both proven to be effective by several players already, so very exciting. But just the other day, we were having a chat about some of the challenges, and you shared some really interesting things that I wasn't even aware we had to think of when trying to do this properly. In your opinion, based on your efforts to ensure that handsets are made affordable for those who currently can't afford them, what is the key learning that you've had?
Yeah, two topics, two learnings from my side. One about device financing initiatives. Basically, the industry is currently implementing two different types of financing. One is based on scoring the customers. So using network data, using mobile money platform data, operators are able to score the customer, and then these customers are targeted using CVM campaigns and direct marketing. They are invited into our stores and can buy the device and pay by installment. Then there are completely different initiatives not based on scoring. So customers are not scored. These initiatives are much simpler to be implemented. Obviously, the operators or the companies are taking more risk in terms of bad debt because there is no scoring, and so the prices are higher. We believe that these two type of device financing complement each other, and so we are leveraging on both in our markets to achieve digital inclusion, leveraging on financing initiative. And this is the first one. The second one is that, in order to move the 2.9 billion people unconnected, operators should get the help and support from the other actors in the value chain. Operators cannot achieve these results alone. Over-the-top, multilaterals, governments, institutions, obviously operators and handset manufacturers, all together as to mobilize the industry and work together, cooperate together to achieve digital inclusion, a better planet and a much more equal planet.
Thank you, David. Actually, I do like that shared approach. And I was in a session on Monday where the CEO of ABSA was saying even the banks need to come to the table because their digital financial services are not going to pick up unless there's the vehicle to drive the customers to their product. So, Sebastian, I'm going to allow you to also share your key learning from your efforts as well.
Yes. So we work very closely with mobile operator in all the continent, not only in Africa. what we see is that, especially in Africa, actually, the 2G, people buying 2G phones, actually, they buy these phones in open market. If you look at the 3 largest operator group in Africa, I believe there's something like 250 million 2G subscribers today with this operator, while the operator is not selling 2G device for many years already. So people are buying through other channels, and we need to make sure that we address these other channels with a value proposition, with a product which is simple to distribute, not in a very formal environment. So device financing is great. It has to be simple. It has to be doable in some informal shops also. The second point is I fully agree on the fact that all the partners or all the participants to the ecosystem, the big app partner, the mobile operator, the wallets, the government also, have to contribute in some way, because none of them alone can change this situation, but all together we can. And the third point I want to insist on is we should not underestimate the resistance to change. So you have people who have been always using a 2G phone, moving to a full smartphone at once. Many people don't want to. I mean, we operate also in US. I have many customers in US who just don't want to use a smartphone. So you have to do it gradually, and we believe a solution like a smart feature phone is a good step. It's one step toward the smartphone adoption, and it allows affordability and let's say not too much disruption, but still get access to some internet services. I'm sorry for that.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think I would also echo the sentiment around some people needing support to, and Noor mentioned it, to understand, you know, what's the value for them to move down that road. And I think women in particular, we know from our research, need more support to understand what is the relevance and the value for them, and then the digital skills to help them get there as well to make that transition. So we have only time left for one question, unfortunately. So I am going to turn to the audience. First hand up gets it. I see someone up front here on the right.
Thank you for the panel. My name is Emmy. I work with FCDO, but I'm based in Nairobi, so I'm with the British High Commission in Nairobi. I want to recognize Rwanda's efforts, and yesterday I was on a panel, on the utilities panel, and with an impressive representation from the government of Kigali, and I must say they were all women, so that's something I thought I needed to say. I think for me it's two challenges actually. It's maybe a comment and a challenge. I think one, when we speak about inclusion, we probably need to have these people in the room. It's easy to speak about women, people with disabilities, but I think they need to be at the table, they need to be on the panel, so we can also hear their voices. I think the last 2 days I've heard a lot about smallholder farmers, you know, bottom of the pyramid, or although somebody say the foundation of the pyramid. But I think we need to also ensure that they're in the room. So I think that's a challenge for me and to the panel and the participants here. I think for me, very much connected to that is, so, I mean, we're here, and it's easy to go away with the energy, but I think sometimes I go away a bit frustrated because I wonder what is that missing link, right? We have, you know, big corporate companies, we have government partners, we have development partners, but we still have issues around inclusion. So I wonder what's that missing link? We talk about partnerships quite a bit, and that's a big word that I've heard the last 2 days. But if you're from MTN or other large corporates, what's that challenge? What's that thing that you would request from the, you know, from the UK government, from the government of Rwanda to make it work, to make, you know, to access, you know, do we need to de-risk something? Do we need to ensure that those smart devices are getting to the bottom of the pyramid? I think we all know what needs to happen. I think the question is what's missing?
Thank you very much. So would either of you like to answer that first? Davide?
Yes. Well, in terms of what is missing as an industry level, we see that from the terminal side, affordability is missing. Unfortunately, if you look at the price point of 4G devices, you can buy a very good quality 4G device around $40. a bit less, a bit more, it depends, but it's around $40. 2G devices could cost less than $10. So this is the big gap that in some way we have to bridge. And this was one of the focus and central point of the United Nations report. Coverage is important, but coverage without device is useless, because at the end customers are not able to access 4G and the connectivity. In this context, what we are doing is, well, obviously working with suppliers to reduce the cost of the device. And we are also working, as I said, on device financing. So the cost will still be $40, but the customer will pay by installment, little by little. The service we launched in Kenya is Lipam Dogom Dogo, which means pay little by little. In South Africa, we call it easy to own. But at the end, the concept is make them affordable, because we will pay a certain amount per month or per week or per day, and therefore the effort will be much less in terms of and the product at the end will be more convenient for the customers.
So I think I will also add, because I know that Vodacom is doing work with us on disability inclusion more broadly, and you guys are also doing really good work to ensure that through partnerships with relevant organizations, like organizations of persons with disabilities, they're aware of and able to access the right devices. So engaging with them, listening to the needs. So I know that there's that element too. Sebastian, I'll allow you to quickly respond and then we'll close.
Yes. To me, there's a need to probably work jointly onto innovative financing. So for small, we're a small company. We are, let's say, a scale-up company. So for us, it's very difficult to move, like to talk to government even, or to work very closely with some of the partners. But we need in every country to somehow have a kind of consortium of private and public players who can really bring each of them a small brick to the subsidy or to the financing of the phone, because one player alone, again, probably does not make sense for an operator to subsidize the gap between a 2G and a 4G phone. It's too much compared to the revenue they can generate, and these are private companies. For us, it's the same. For app partner, it's the same. But all together, we can make it. Yeah. So we need some ways to work together into this innovative subsidiary and subsidies and financing.
Couldn't agree more. I think we've definitely landed on that shared, that partnerships approach to actually make meaningful change here. So that brings us to the end of the panel. I certainly hope that next time we connect here in Kigali, that we'll be highlighting progress on really the work that we've managed to do to actually get the devices into the hands of the people that need it most. And with that, I'd like to hand back to her Honourable Minister.
No.
No? A question? Okay.
Not a question. I think I wanted to respond.
Yes, please.
Maybe not to respond, just to share with you what's missing. I believe everyone in this room shares that frustration, and part of why we're having these conversations is really to understand what can we do differently. And I'll share a couple of examples. I think what has happened over time is that we've had business models that are probably one size fits all, and that's why they've been able to address just a particular segment of the population and not the other. When you look at the unconnected, whether it's the unconnected in terms of living within areas of coverage, or the unconnected in terms of usage gap, what you see is the same people where the current business models that are in place will never work for them. And so it doesn't matter how much we talk, if we don't revisit those business models and figure out more innovative ways of how we can do this, then we'll just quote statistics, forever. And sometimes I've had different conversations where, even as we think about the discussion around affordability of devices, where the default action is, should we go back to the OEMs and figure out a device with less capabilities and much cheaper, but we're just solving part of the equation. In 5 years' time, then these people will still be unconnected because they can't access certain things. And so I think the key question is if you have, let's say, the middle class that can afford certain devices, what do we need to do differently to make sure that even those, what you call the foundation or the, the bottom of the pyramid, can also afford that? Now, it could be, I think the panelists talked about installment payments. I mean, I think it's pretty much in the developed world, in the developing world, where you still find that someone has to pay the full cost of a device upfront. Yet in other markets, and of course we can talk about credit scoring and everything, and the risk and whatever it is, but are there other things that we can do in the absence of scoring that can allow for us to really take care of the risk that we see, but allow for these people to afford the same quality of device that other people are able to afford today? And I'll give you an example, and I like what you said around how do we bring these people at the table? Even part of us, even within our policy-making institutions, we ensure we have people with disabilities who will speak to their needs, because I can only imagine what I think is the best solution, but they know better what most people that live with disabilities require. Similarly, that's why when you said you had so many people, women on panels, we cannot talk about women-focused policies when they're not in the room, when they're not part of designing those policies. But I just wanted to share two examples which were very eye-opening for us when we started the Connect Rwanda campaign. And every time I share this particular example, everyone will laugh at it. So we started off and said we need to sensitize everyone around the need for smartphones. Because what we had realized is that we had, and this is the problem, this is the missing link, is that we have too many piecemeal interventions that are siloed and nothing is connecting with the other, and that's why we're not able to see the kind of impact that we're looking for. On one hand, you have a program around building digital literacy skills, but imagine going to a village and training people every week. You leave, no one has a device to even test the skills you've given them. It's almost like you've done nothing, because you've trained them, you've left, and that's just about it. When you come back a year later, they won't even remember what you trained them on, because they never got to use it, and they're very dependent on the agents who help them to access some of these digital services. And so you cannot build digital literacy skills until you also fix the problem around people having devices, because once you train them with the basic skills, then the rest they'll self-teach and self-train on their own, and that's how you'll be able to measure that the literacy levels in the country are really growing over time. So the example I want to share is, we wanted to do smartphone penetration, talk about it, and we had a campaign where people, I think we were able to collect about 48,000 smartphones. We were able to figure out which households would never own a smartphone in the next 5 years and target them so that they are given this as a gift, but it also becomes like a campaign to create awareness around it. But while we were doing that campaign, I asked my team to go around to certain groups, and they went particularly to the markets. You have people who have bicycles, and what they do is to help people who are coming to shop to transport their produce. So we asked them, because we wanted to understand what are the barriers, why don't they own a smartphone? And so we asked them, what would it take for you to own a smartphone? And they laughed. They just couldn't believe it, that for us we felt like a smartphone was important. And they said, you give me a smartphone, this bicycle that I'm using is my friend's. I just borrow it for a couple of hours so that I can come and make some money, some income for my family. So if you give me a smartphone, chances are that I'm going to default. I'll never be able to pay for it because I'm struggling to make ends meet with the little income I'm getting from, being able to transport food produce across. So I said, but what would you want? And they said, if you're going to give me a smartphone, bundle it with an asset such as a new bicycle that I'll own, and I'll know that I can make revenue that will allow me to pay off for the bicycle and for the smartphone. Now, we would have never thought about it if we sat in our offices and felt like device penetration was the best thing to do. And because of that input, we were able to go to solar companies and say, you are doing rural electrification. Our biggest challenge is that there are so many households that do not have electricity. And so if I give them a smartphone, they still have to find at least $2 a week to go and charge. So it doesn't make sense. So we asked the solar companies, can we bundle this solar home system with a smartphone? And I think they were paying around 100 installments for 100 weeks, at about 2 years. And we said, if households are paying $2, can we make it $2.50? Can it make it $3? But it'll be a bundled service because you've created value for them. They have access to electricity. You have solved for the electricity problem they have, and they don't have to look for money to charge. So in many ways, when we think about digital, sometimes it feels very far-fetched from the ordinary person, but we also must be deliberate about how we piggyback some of the initiatives that allow them to generate income to better themselves so that they start to see value of this digital tool that we are giving them. Now, I can say all of this, but we can only test them and experiment with these things to really understand how much of the needle it will help us to shift. So I think these are platforms that allow us to share all of this because, again, that's why everyone on the panel is talking about partnerships, because not one single player can do it on their own, but we need to integrate some of these initiatives in order for us to create value for the layman. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. We made the mistake of not actually just keeping you up on the stage. Oversight on our part, so sorry. Thank you again to my panelists, and I'll now hand back over to Phoebe to close the session for us. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for making the time to join us here. I think we've heard a lot. We've also been challenged, and we hope that when you're going home and you're looking at the challenges, you're also seeing how can we use that to drive impact. Let that be a challenge to everyone, yeah? So I'll keep it short because we have another meeting, I think another session that starts in a few minutes. And yeah, thank you all. Enjoy the rest of the sessions. And just remember, doing is never done.